Imagine New York, 1933. It's pouring rain, the alleys smell like cheap gin and gunpowder, and the guy swinging from the rooftops. He is definitely not cracking jokes.
No, not even a little bit.
Right. He's this cynical, aging private eye carrying a heavy revolver, just hiding behind a fedora and a trench coat. So, welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We are jumping into a massive stack of reviews, critical analyses, and, just general community reactions surrounding the new series Spider-Noir.
And there is a lot to cover with this one. People are very opinionated.
Oh, absolutely. So, okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to really look at this radical deconstruction of the Spider-Man mythos. We want to figure out how this show strips away like every standard modern superhero trope to deliver this gritty, grounded detective thriller. And ultimately, whether that aggressive tonal shift actually works for you guys, the audience.
Yeah, because the shift in tone here, it completely rewrites the DNA of what we've all been conditioned to expect, right? Like, we are moving way, way away from those sprawling narratives where you have to save the universe from cosmic threats. The sources really emphasize that this series operates on a much more intimate, almost claustrophobic scale.
Claustrophobic is a great word for it.
It is. It isolates the protagonist in this dark, unforgiving city and basically forces him to navigate a deeply personal mystery. It's an exploration of how a mythic frontier functions when all the traditional markers of heroism are just gone.
And that visual stripping away is entirely literal too. Before we can even dissect the hero, we kind of have to look at the broken world he's trapped in.
The setting is almost its own character here.
It really is. The source material paints this incredibly specific picture of the 1930s. We're talking about vintage cars rumbling down cobblestone streets, heavy Art Deco architecture looming in the background, and just this oppressive, perpetual rain.
Right. It never stops raining.
Never. And actually, there was a specific tip from a publication called Cinema Express that really stood out in my notes. They are completely adamant that to truly experience the mechanics of this show, you have to watch it in black and white.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They claim it's like the only way the series functions as intended.
Well, what's fascinating here is that removing color fundamentally alters your psychological processing as a viewer.
Wait, really? How so?
Yeah, think about it. When you watch a standard superhero film, bright primary colors act as these visual anchors, right? They draw your eye directly to the action and signal this underlying optimism.
Oh, like the bright reds and blues.
Exactly. But when you strip that away and restrict the entire palette to grayscale, you're literally forcing your brain to process information differently. The cognitive load shifts.
From just following the flashy colors to, tracking the shadows?
Yes. You stop tracking colorful movement and start analyzing contrast, texture, the interplay of light and shadow. You start paying closer attention to the silhouette of a character hiding in an alley, or just the weary expressions on a face that's half hidden by a street lamp.
That makes total sense.
It visually enforces moral ambiguity. You are quite literally perceiving the narrative in shades of gray, which aligns your psychological state perfectly with the themes of classic noir.
I love that. It's almost like taking a pristine, high-definition, glossy comic book and just running it through a vintage, ink-stained printing press.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
You lose the flashy distractions, but you expose the raw, gritty texture underneath. And look, that heavy aesthetic, it mandates a protagonist who carries that exact same weight. A pristine, optimistic hero would just look ridiculous standing in that rain.
Completely out of place.
Which brings us to Nicolas Cage's portrayal of Ben Reilly, the aging former vigilante once known as the Spider.
And I have to say, Cage's performance is highlighted across the board as the absolute anchor of the series.
Yeah, everyone seems to agree on that.
He completely subverts the kinetic energy and, that youthful exuberance that has defined this character for, over 60 years?
Yeah, definitely. The adjectives used in the reviews are so incredibly specific. They describe his performance as strange, intense, funny, and heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking is the key there.
It is. He plays Ben Reilly as a man who has entirely withdrawn from society after years of crime fighting and just devastating personal tragedies. He's tired, he's emotionally damaged.
Just scraping by.
Exactly. Spending his days solving small-time cases, actively trying to outrun the memories of a time when he actually believed he could be a symbol of hope.
It's a heavy burden to carry.
It is, but I have to stop you there and push back on this entire premise for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm just struggling to buy the necessity of this adaptation. Like, if you take away the webs, the jokes, the bright colors, and the fundamental optimism that defines the character.
Guncore Spider-Man, yeah.
Right. Why call it Spider-Man at all? Why not just invent an original hard-boiled detective from scratch? It kind of feels like the studio is just pasting a globally recognized IP over an entirely unrelated noir script just to guarantee viewership.
That skepticism is entirely justified.
Huh.
And it's actually a huge debate raging in the community forums right now.
I bet.
But the underlying mechanics of the narrative actually rely heavily on the audience's pre-existing knowledge of the character. The show is utilizing this concept of a fallen paragon.
Okay, explain that a bit.
So if you create a brand new, cynical detective, the audience just accepts his misery as a baseline, right? That's just who he is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But by mapping these heavy noir traditions onto a character that you intimately know as a beacon of boundless optimism, the show generates this immense dramatic friction.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
It's like the audience's memory of the typical Spider-Man acts almost like a phantom limb. You expect him to bounce back with a witty quip, and instead you get a heavy sigh and a swig from a flask.
Wow, that phantom limb idea is wild.
Right, the emotional damage feels earned, because you know exactly what he had to lose to get to this point. It highlights the brutal toll of heroism in a way an original character just never could.
Okay, that actually completely changes how I view it. That concept of the phantom limb, expecting invulnerability and getting pure exhaustion, that bleeds perfectly into how the series handles its action sequences.
Oh, definitely.
Because here's where it gets really interesting. If the hero is mortal and tired, the action has to reflect that vulnerability. And the sources are definitive on this point. Spider-Noir aggressively rejects the current box office formula.
Like completely throws it out the window.
Yeah. There are no multiverse portals opening in the sky. There is no cinematic universe building shoehorned in to set up 5 future spin-offs. And most importantly, absolutely no giant CGI armies leveling city blocks.
Thank goodness for that. And, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the rejection of that spectacle is a highly deliberate narrative tool.
How so?
Well, modern superhero media often suffers from a dilution of stakes. When a character can survive being thrown through 3 skyscrapers, or they can just rely on a magic nanotech suit to absorb a missile strike.
You stop worrying about them.
Exactly. The audience subconsciously stops worrying about their actual physical safety.
And that is not the case here at all. The action here is entirely street level, and the choreography forces you to feel every single hit.
It's brutal.
Very brutal. When Ben Reilly gets into a fight in an alleyway, he isn't gracefully flipping off walls. It's an exhausting struggle. He takes punches that leave visible bruises. He runs out of breath. He physically limps away from victories.
He's just a guy in a suit at the end of the day.
Exactly. Every physical confrontation carries a massive amount of weight because his mortality is constantly, front and center.
And by stripping away the invulnerability and the high-tech gadgets, the writers are forced to choreograph action that actually serves the tension of a detective thriller.
Right, because the stakes are so grounded.
Exactly. A simple fistfight in a smoky warehouse suddenly feels incredibly dangerous because the protagonist could genuinely lose his life. The lack of empty visual spectacle ensures that violence is treated with consequence, which, is a staple of the hard-boiled detective genre.
And since he isn't fighting alien warlords, the narrative has to invent a threat that matches his grounded, gritty vulnerability.
Right, a different kind of monster.
Exactly. That threat is the systemic, deep-rooted corruption of 1930s New York. The plot mechanics follow this very traditional, slow-burn noir structure.
Almost to a fault, some would say.
Right. Ben is hired for a seemingly simple private investigation, like finding a missing person or tailing a cheating spouse, and that single case acts as the entry point into a sprawling citywide conspiracy.
It's a classic genre trope, really. The initial mystery is merely a symptom of a much larger societal sickness.
I like to think of it like a massive game of Jenga.
Okay, I like that.
Ben starts by pulling out one of the bottom blocks, a low-level street informant. But removing that block destabilizes a dirty precinct captain on the next level up.
And then he pulls that block.
Yeah, he pulls that block, and suddenly the entire structure is swaying, threatening to topple powerful criminals, wealthy socialites, and corrupt politicians at the very top.
It all comes tumbling down.
Exactly. The deeper he digs, the more he realizes the rot infects every level of the city. The sources highlight that this unraveling forces Ben to confront really painful truths about trusted allies, which leans heavily into themes of betrayal and emotional manipulation.
But, while that structure allows for incredible thematic depth, it also introduces specific structural flaws.
Yeah, we have to talk about the negative reviews.
You do. The reviews are not universally flawless, particularly when it comes to the execution of this complex conspiracy.
Yeah, a lot of the negative critiques hone in heavily on the pacing. Several reviewers mention that certain episodes just drag significantly. They get bogged down in multiple misdirections and red herrings that, honestly, don't always pay off.
Which can be frustrating for a viewer.
For sure. There's also a recurring complaint that the supporting characters feel noticeably underdeveloped compared to all the intricate plotting going on.
Well, we can trace those flaws directly back to the mechanics of the noir genre itself.
Oh, really? How's that?
Noir is inherently solipsistic. It relies almost entirely on the solitary detective's perspective, often conveyed through that heavy, cynical internal narration.
Right, the classic voiceover.
Exactly. The narrative camera rarely leaves Ben Reilly's shoulder, and when you dedicate that much narrative real estate to exploring the protagonist's damaged psychology, everyone else in the story kind of suffers.
They get pushed to the background.
Yeah, the supporting characters, whether they are informants, love interests, corrupt officials, they often cease to be fully fleshed out human beings. They become mere plot devices, just existing to provide clues or act as mirrors, reflecting Ben's own internal trauma.
That makes total sense.
And furthermore, the slow pacing is just a byproduct of translating a character known for kinetic action into a slow burn detective format. You need time to establish atmosphere and let betrayals sting.
But if you're expecting typical comic book momentum,
right, that deliberate tempo is going to create friction for viewers expecting something else.
And that intense focus on his internal trauma, it really comes to a boiling point in the finale. The slow burn investigation leads to a climax that completely shatters traditional superhero ending formulas.
It really does.
By the final episodes, Ben finally corners the architects of the city's corruption. But the sources are super clear on this. The climax isn't a massive, explosive battle to save the world.
No sky beams here.
No sky beams. The real confrontation is entirely internal. It's this psychological battle over whether Ben can forgive himself for his past failures, overcome his crippling guilt, and just accept the deeply flawed, compromised hero he has been forced to become.
In choosing to sideline the external conspiracy to resolve an internal psychological crisis, that is an incredibly audacious choice for a property of this size. It directly challenges the audience's trained expectations.
It definitely challenged them, because the audience reactions to the finale are completely fractured.
Oh, I've seen the forums. It's a mess.
It is. Some viewers applaud the heavy emotional resolution, calling it an absolute masterclass in character study. But a significant portion of the audience feels the second half of the season just falls flat.
Because of the unresolved plot lines.
Exactly. They complain that several major plot threads regarding the city's corrupt elite are left entirely open-ended. Without a definitive physical triumph over the villains, they feel the ending lacks the necessary payoff.
This raises an important question about that friction between audience expectation and artistic intent. Decades of blockbuster media have trained viewers to require a specific catharsis at the end of a superhero narrative.
The bad guy goes to jail, the city is saved.
Exactly. We expect order to be fully restored. So when a show actively denies that external closure, and instead delivers a quiet, guilt-focused internal resolution, it alienates viewers who are seeking that traditional dopamine hit.
It feels like a letdown to them.
Right. Yet, analyzing it from a purely structural standpoint, leaving the external conflict unresolved, perfectly aligns with the mechanics of a noir story. The genre dictates that systemic corruption cannot be punched into submission.
Right, you can't just arrest one guy and fix the 1930s.
No, it is a permanent fixture of the world. Noir isn't about saving the city, it's about navigating the darkness and surviving with your soul somewhat intact. The creative team leaving the conspiracy open-ended suggests they understand that fighting institutional rot is a war of attrition, not a single battle you win in the season finale.
Yeah, and the sources do actually note that the team has mapped out a potential second season to continue this slow burn war, provided the viewership numbers justify it, of course.
I really hope they do.
Same here. So gathering all these perspectives together, the critical consensus lands at a pretty solid 8.5 out of 10. The overwhelming agreement is that Spider-Noir is a wildly bold adaptation. It successfully synthesizes gritty crime drama with superhero mythology, proving that this IP can function at a really high level without relying on a safety net of CGI spectacles and multiverse cameos.
It's refreshing, honestly.
It is. If you are experiencing superhero fatigue, if the endless setups for the next cinematic phase just leave you feeling exhausted, this series offers a highly specific antidote. It gives you a broken hero, a dark city, and a grounded mystery that actually respects your intelligence.
You know, analyzing the ultimate trajectory of Ben Reilly's journey leaves us with a really compelling philosophical dilemma to consider.
Okay, lay it on us.
So what does this all mean? He reaches the agonizing conclusion that the city's corruption is entirely systemic, right? That it runs far deeper than any one costume villain he could ever put behind bars.
Right, it's the whole system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if the rot is foundational to the world itself, does that render the concept of a happy ending mathematically impossible for this character? In a genre built entirely on moral compromise and permanent shadows, are some heroes fundamentally destined to lose the war, no matter how many individual battles they manage to survive?
Wow.
It forces you to wonder if that bright, sunlit skyline of his youth is permanently erased, leaving him in a reality where the absolute best a hero can hope for is simply to endure the rain for one more night.